What's cracking, everyone? Friedemann Findeisen here from Holistic Songwriting. How are you doing? Welcome to Livestream number 102. This one is titled Still 2 More Weeks because we got 2 more weeks to go till the release of the Kickstarter for the songwriting decks. So, super exciting. Again, if you haven't checked them out yet, you will hear about them soon. If you are already on my mailing list, you should have gotten a pre-launch email for that, so you can already kind of opt in and say that you're interested in this kind of thing. But if you're not, just wait for the 15th and you will be hopefully one of the backers for it. I think it's a really cool thing that I've been working on for a really long time, and it's cool to see it finally come to fruition and see it go live on Kickstarter. All right, folks. So what are we going to do today? We're going to look at some questions and songs, are we not? So let's head on over here and see what's going on. Okay, so here's songs, here's questions, and here's questions. Okay, so first question to us today comes from Aitor, who says, "Hi Friedemann, I think since chord notation was invented, we don't give enough thought to the voicings." Very true, very true. You already explained that open voicings tend to have higher hype levels than closed voicings, but I'd like to know more about the nuances, genres, and emotions related to each voicing decision. Okay, the nuances, genres, and emotions related to each voicing decision. Okay, for instance, the chord formed by the notes C, E, G, A, D in this order. So let me think about that. C, E, G, A, and D, yeah. From lower note to higher note sounds completely different than the jazzier E, A, D, G, C. Same notes, but separated by fourths. Okay, yeah, you get that 4 chord there, yeah. Even a C, E, G is already very different than C, G, E, broken 10th chord. So going C, G, and E at the top, okay. I think the last one feels more emotional. What about all the inversions and the different orders in which you can put every open chord? Okay, so again, a lot of questions. And how the voice leading decisions themselves affect the emotion of the song, adding horizontal intervals to the vertical structures. Okay, what can you tell us about voicings, voice leadings, and their emotional effects? Okay, I think I'm going to make this a two-parter, and we're only going to talk about voicings today because that's already quite a bit. Well, we'll see. Maybe I'll be able to talk about voice leading as well. Okay, so first of all, voicings. Yes, I completely agree with you. I think voicings are so important, and we don't talk about them enough. You'll go to any YouTube channel, and they'll talk about which chord to use, but they'll never tell you like in which voicings you're supposed to use them and how the voice leading works. They're often interconnected, but they don't have to be. Okay, so first of all, one thing that I think is really interesting is that with our generation now, now that we have a lot of musicians, a lot of artists who come to music from a more practical background, let's say, so not from a theoretical background like, we used to, there's not so many musicians who know music theory who can read notation these days, and they don't know exactly what they're doing. They just they draw a couple of MIDI notes on the screen, and that's what we end up hearing, right? So what we'll hear a lot now today is we'll actually just have triads in the same root position and just like moving like that. So you have a 1 chord, and then you get a 4 chord, then you get a 5 chord maybe, right? So that it's just this. It's exactly the same distances for all the notes. Now in classical training, this would be the worst thing because it's obviously got really bad voice leading, right? Because if you got a 1 chord and then you can move to a 4 chord like this just by moving these two up. So the E goes to the F and the G goes to an A. Already you got your 4 chord. If you want to go to the G, you now just move that up 1 step, and then you go back down if you want to go back to the 1, right? So that's proper voice leading. But with a lot of electronic dance music especially, people don't tend to do that. It's just like da 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 da, and it's a certain sound. I'm not saying it's bad by any means. It's from a traditional standpoint, if you're looking at it from a classically trained standpoint, yes, that is absolutely bad. And if you want to write a jazz piece, then you probably don't want to use this approach. But it is a valid approach to writing chords these days. Okay, so that's one thing that I wanted to mention right up front. So in terms of voicings, I find that there's really only one thing that really matters about the voicing, but I might be wrong about this, but there's one thing I've identified for my own songs that I do use. So for me, the really the core thing is which note. So there's two defining factors. One is how wide is the voicing. But you've already noted that. Like wider voicings tend to sound more open, tend to sound bigger, tend to sound more open, and more smaller voicings. So if we have, I don't know, a C minor 9, we could play that as C, D, E flat, like almost like a cluster chord. It's going to sound very, very tense, very kind of squeezed together, very close, right? Which is why we call them close voicings. And the other deciding factors, as you correctly pointed out, is which note is at the top of the chord. And really, that determines not only the melody that your chords will play, and this is a big thing that we should talk about in just a second when we talk about voice leading. It also really determines the quality, the emotional quality of the chord, I think. So the middle notes and the lower notes don't really matter as much unless they're the bass also. But if there is a bass, that really, if I have a bass playing a C, it doesn't really matter whether my lowest note, as far as I have been able to tell so far at least, if I'm in the right hand of my piano, I'm playing a C and as the lowest note, or an E or a G, doesn't really matter as far as I've been able to figure out. What really matters is the highest note that we play, because again, that's part of the melody, and it also gives us the emotional quality of the chord. Now, if we play the 1 up top, it just has a sort of finalized emotion. Again, these are the things that relate to the intervals, right? So every scale degree has a certain emotion that comes with it, and it's exactly those. Like whatever goes up top, that's essentially the emotion that we get. So a 1 feels kind of finalized. 3 feels very emotional. Like if we have a major third up there, it sounds very happy. If we have a minor third up there, it sounds very sad or very beautiful. If we have a 5th up there, it sounds very cold or very sort of hypnotic. And so on. If we have a flat 7 up there, it sounds a little more tense. So that's kind of that's a big deciding factor for the quality of the chord. That and how close the voicing is. In terms of voice leading, man, there's so much to talk about. Let me just talk about one thing, and that's, as you are correctly identified, really one of the most important things for emotion, I feel. I mean, there's a lot of technical things we could be talking about and what kind of different ways of voice leading there are, and there's the parallel and chromatic and whatever. There's so many things, but I don't think they really matter all that much. What really matters is there's really 3 approaches, right? There's the one where we just move the chord like this, which I talked about. There's one where we have proper voice leading. So C like this goes to F like this. So just the E moves to the F and the G moves to the A. That would be proper voice leading. And then there's sort of an in-between. And one particularly interesting thing that I've noticed that has come up over the last couple of years, and which I also see some pianists doing, or keyboard players doing, is that they'll think about their voice leading in a much more horizontal way than even with the proper voice leading. What they'll often do is this I only recommend to someone who has really good intricate knowledge of the harmonic system. If you don't, this is going to sound weird if you do it wrong. But what they did, I had them. I talked to a band, Frey. She has a sort of a jazz ensemble, and they had worked with this really famous pianist, and this is his approach. And I thought that was really, really interesting because it makes a lot of sense to me. I've used this in electronic productions as well. So what they did, they, instead of playing chords, so simultaneously playing a bunch of notes, they would play a melody, sort of. I mean, a melody in a rhythm of a chord progression. So it wasn't like da 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 da, but it was more like da 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 da, sort of a melody that fit into the song, not necessarily the key. Again, remember, this is jazz. And then they went back over it and played a second melody on top of that first one, more of almost like a backing vocal to that first note, to that first melody. And then they did it again, and I think even a 4th time. I think it's a song that was kind of layered. So in the beginning it was just one melody. At the end you heard like 4 or 5 different melodies going on, all on at the same time. And what this led to was a very kind of free harmony, which I thought was really, really interesting. It sounded really, really cool. It built in a very natural way. It was a very melodic thing. It almost had a little hook to it. Again, this is kind of difficult to do, so only attempt this if you have a lot of experience with the harmonic system, but I just thought it was worth mentioning. So this is kind of the third group. Again, the first one was jumping. Second one is the three main groups, I would say. The second one is proper voice leading. And the third one is a more melodic approach where we don't really think about. So for example, with the proper voice leading, we would go from G to A, right? And that would be our melody. If we go with a more melodic approach, we might say, well, we're going to want to go from G to a B flat or something like that, because that's the melody we want to have at the top of our chords. Because this is a really important thing that is often overlooked. Your chords can also have a melody. It should be way more simpler than the main vocals of your song. But if you have like, let me think of something. Da 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 da. No, that's more of a brass line. That's not really kind of a melody, more so than. I'm trying to think of songs that have this in the piano. Now I have a very specific example in my head, but it's an example that you guys are not going to know. So it's kind of hard for me to think of something else now. And again, this is live. So, anyways, yeah, having a piano, chord structure where the top note kind of makes up a new melody is a really cool thing to do, and very much worth exploring. Now, this was already a long answer, but not long enough for all the questions you asked me. So if you want to drill down deeper in future episodes, please feel free to, because this is a huge topic that we could be talking a lot more about. Next, we have a question from Eric, who says, as developing songwriters, when we start to work collaboratively, is there an approach that's too formal? Like, when is it smart to talk about an agreement only after the song is given life in public, or at the beginning? Oh, okay. No, I mean, you can, you mean an agreement in terms of, that was a weird sound. You mean an agreement in terms of royalty splits, or what's the exact question here? So I'm guessing this is about who gets the money at the end, right? I think this is something you should talk about very, very early on. For me, it's always going to be a 50-50 split. If after the first song that we've written together, I notice, oh, wow, okay, I really spent a lot more time on this than they did, and a lot more effort, which we're always inclined to say, keep that in mind. Like, we always feel like we did more work on a track than the other person. That's just always going to happen. But if you really feel like, oh, wow, they just work jack shit on it, right? Sometimes you get that. Like, sometimes you're just waiting for them to send back their version of the song, and it's just there's a lot of waiting involved, and they're not pulling their weight. Then the next time, if you're still gonna write with them after that, you can obviously say, like, hey, you know what? Last time I really worked on this a lot more than you did. I think it would be fair if we do a 70-30 split, or maybe even an 80-20 split. Okay. And you are more of an arranger, so you get like an arranger credit of maybe 15%. It depends on how that's something you make out between the two of you. But generally, this is something to discuss at the very beginning. Yeah, like before you start working, you want to get all the shit out of the way so you can really focus on the creative work. So that during the songwriting process, you never have to think about it. Also, don't ever renegotiate. Honestly, it always backfires. It's never a good situation. If you feel like during the process of writing a song together with someone else, you feel like, oh man, they're not pulling their weight. Unless they're really not pulling their weight, if they're really doing a horrible job and they're not trying at all, you could say like, dude, I don't want to work with you anymore. I'm going to finish this on my own if you don't mind. Right. Or even if you mind. Because if you wrote 100% of the song that's already there and they didn't contribute anything to it, you can say like, hey dude, I might as well be writing this on my own. So either write with me or, whatever expletive you want to use here. Yeah, but that's kind of how I would approach it. But if you have been writing together, they're trying, it's just not coming out that great. Don't renegotiate. Just keep it in mind, and for the next time you guys are going to work together, you can renegotiate. But not for this particular song. If you do want to stay friends with this person, because oftentimes you are friends besides being colleagues, and if you want to write with them again, then it's always a bad idea to renegotiate, because again, it puts the focus on the money, and what you should be focusing on is creativity and making the greatest song you possibly can together. All right, next question comes to us from Nico, who says, hi, Friedemann. Let's say your main focus is becoming a good songwriter, and because you're not that into mixing and mastering, at some point your tracks are decent but not good enough compared to the industry standard quality. How do you go about bridging that gap? Just hire some professional mixing, mastering engineers and or performers on Sound Better? Yes, that's exactly what you do. I mean, you have a third option, which is just try harder, work on it seriously, which is, I think in terms of performance, it's always worth working on your craft. If you want to be, I think every songwriter should also be a good singer. Like I'm still working on my voice, and I think it is so important to always train your singing voice, because this is a tool that will always pay off. It is so hugely important and so useful if you can sing your own tracks. You're going to save a ton of money, you're going to save a lot of time, and you're going to be able to sing greater melodies. If you have the ability to reach higher notes, you can now all of a sudden you've branched into a new frontier. You now can sing more impressive melodies, right? That's going to make your songs all the better. So I think this part I would really advise every single one of you to take care of. Do practice your singing. Producing is a close second, but you know, if you have a good friend or someone who, for a small buck, is willing to produce your music and does so well, like at least a demo, and demos should still sound like they're on the radio, just, you know, not with the final artist, if we're honest. They should be able to produce a great sounding demo. Then that's also something that you can do. Obviously, if you do it yourself, if you practice it yourself, you're going to have way more control over it. You're going to know what they're doing. You're going to know what you want a little bit more. It's always difficult to say what you want if you don't have any expertise in that area, right? I'm working with a graphic artist right now for the Kano Head record, and I'm struggling, man. I'm really struggling. Like, I think we get there in the end, but it just takes a lot of explaining on my side because I just don't know exactly what I want. And we have to go back and forth a lot of times, and it's really frustrating for me because I feel like I'm taking up the artist's time and money. So that should hopefully give you a good idea. Yes, Sound Better is a good one. I just recently heard about Nashville for Hire, which I think is pretty cool. There's a bunch more on the internet, and they're all pretty good as far as I'm concerned. I mean, the most important thing is check out their music and make sure that they produce the kind of music that you want to make. That is always the most important thing, and then go with your gut. If you feel like, well, he's worked with Sia and whatever, Justin Timberlake, but this guy who has worked with no one sounds better, go with the guy who's worked with no one. Honestly, go with your gut, because the guy who worked with Sia and Justin Timberlake maybe was just kind of setting up the microphone for the session and didn't really have anything to do with the record and has no clue how to properly mix a record. So go with your gut. Go with the one that you feel is going to do the best job with your record. All right. And lastly, we have a question from Miko. Excuse me, folks. A question from Miko, who says, ideas on how to get an artist brand going, especially if you're not going to do gigs, just write and record songs as one-man band that collaborates with others. I'm a marketer, but still feel a bit lost with this. I'm currently working on the band identity and logo, thinking of using Bandcamp and SoundCloud as the initial distribution channels, maybe Spotify eventually, through CD Baby as well. And possibly a Facebook page, maybe Instagram for publishing songs and content. I also don't want to be very visible with my own face. Rather, it's a fictional character or even a movement with their symbols, like Gorillaz, Daft Punk, or the Anonymous with their Guy Fawkes masks. All right. The potential fans listen to vintage rock from 70s and 90s. What kind of other content could I create besides songs? How could I grow my audience and get my music noticed? There's so much stuff out there. I'm starting from zero. I know there's many big questions, but all of these will be super helpful. Thanks. That is a lot of questions. Okay. What you're asking is a tall order. You should know this. Because the Gorillaz and Daft Punk are huge live acts. And so they can pull that off. And also their musical style in both cases is something of a more electronic nature. So especially with Daft Punk, obviously Gorillaz maybe less so, but still it's a very kind of dance music thing. For vintage rock, I don't know if I can see that, honestly. I'm sure it's possible, but it is going to be a challenge, and you're going to have to work with your limitations. If you don't want to show your face, if you don't want to shoot music videos with yourself in them, that is going to be a huge limitation. It's going to make it way more difficult to get out there, because how are people... Rock music is all about authenticity. And the Gorillaz and Daft Punk aren't about authenticity. It's about having a good time, and the music is fun and weird and funky, right? That's what it's about. Rock music is all about authenticity, man, about showing, like, showing the rock and roll kind of attitude. And how are you going to get that across if people can't see your face, don't know what you look like, who you are? That's just going to be a very big challenge, and you're going to have to find a solution to solve this problem. And I think you have two options. Either you start making videos and you put yourself in videos, which I think is your best option. It's going to take some time. You're going to have to learn how to use After Effects and Premiere, probably a little bit of Photoshop, possibly even, to make sure that you can create some cool videos. There's tons of tutorials online. It's not too difficult to learn. I learned it myself just through YouTube tutorials, and I think I've gotten pretty good at both programs. It just takes a while, and it's work, for sure. But in either way, it's going to be work. The other way that you can probably solve your problem is by solving your problem. What I mean by that is try to figure out a way in which you can be authentic and approachable and have a personal relationship with your fans that doesn't require your face. And that is going to be, to me, that seems like a really, really big challenge. But if you find a solution for it, maybe that's the next big thing. So it could be your thing. It's just going to be very, very tough, because I don't have any idea how you would do that. I think you always need some kind of connection with your fan, because ultimately this is a relationship between you and your fans. It's all about the relationship building. And how are you going to have a relationship with someone if they character and make videos about that fictional character? So it might either be a friend of yours or animation. Animation, again, very costly, takes a lot of time. Not saying that's a bad idea. That might be a good idea, but it's very costly and very time consuming. So that's going to be a very big challenge for you as well. Honestly, I think, if you don't want to perform, I'm the same. I don't want to go out live. It's not my thing. I'm more of a songwriter, but I am still an artist. Like, I definitely... At first, I was struggling with the idea of putting my face to my music as well, because for other reasons, though, than in your case. Like, I am certainly a performer, but for me, the challenge was always, well, I have my holistic songwriting audience now, and they don't know me as an artist, so there's going to be there's going to be a dichotomy there, right? Because how I appear here on holistic songwriting is the way I am, right? Just really relaxed and genuinely a fun person, hopefully, to be around, right? But with my artist music, if I'm an artist, to me, it always my thing has always been channeling what the music wants, right? And I have some really aggressive music, so if that's what the music wants, that's what I want to give people. So there is this dichotomy, and so that was a big reason in the beginning why I didn't want to appear in my with my music, like didn't want to give it a face. But I've changed my mind recently because I think it is important. Again, yes, I was a little bit afraid of it, but ultimately I came through. I came through with myself. Wow, that sounded really full of myself, but there you go. Ultimately, I realized that it is important for fans to know who you are and to have a face that they can associate your music with. And what you're saying is just the tip of the iceberg, Bandcamp and SoundCloud is just the tip of the iceberg. I can highly recommend you buy Get More Fans, this one here. And even better, my new favorite book is by Ari Herstand, How to Make It in the Modern Music Business, or in the New Music Business, something like that. A new edition is coming out in a couple of days. That's a really, really great book that is very approachable. This here, I recently had a Skype session with a lawyer, and they were like, ooh, a lot of small text, cool. I think they're probably the only person in the world who has said that about this book, because it's a lot of text. So if you don't enjoy reading a lot, and this is more like a dictionary. If you want to look up something, that's the book for that. Otherwise, Ari Herstand's book is the one I would recommend. There's a lot of stuff about marketing in there as well. Even if you don't want to be a performing musician, I think that's definitely worth a read. What you're going to be looking at is a lot of marketing through all sorts of channels. And you know this, being a marketer yourself, you kind of start with all the platforms and then you see which ones work best and you 80/20 it from there, right? So you start with Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, Spotify. I mean, it should be on Spotify, iTunes, and blah, blah, blah. Anyways, it should be on YouTube. It should be on all the platforms anyways. But you advertise it on as many platforms as you can, and then you 80/20 and see which ones work the best and just go for those in the future, and then find the best way to advertise your music there. And you kind of build up one platform. For me, that's YouTube, and I don't really have another platform. I have a couple of subscribers on Facebook, a couple, like really just a couple on Instagram. But I don't really care about those. For me, it's YouTube, man. And I'm 80/20ing on YouTube, so that's the platform that's the most important to me. And obviously my email list, right? That should go without saying. My email list is certainly my main hub. And if YouTube ever goes down, I definitely have my email list. Okay, so that hopefully gave you a couple of ideas. This is a big question that you asked me here. If you have any future questions, please feel free to ask them here on the live chat, because this is certainly something that's interesting to a lot of people, not just yourself. Okay. Good. Let's move on to the songs. And it seems as if we only have 2 songs for today. First one of which is from Kyle, who says, thanks for the advice. Oh, hold on. Just remembered. And there we go. Okay, so Kyle says, thanks for the advice on the song we submitted last week. It was really helpful. Here's another track we are working on at the moment. Okay, more from Little Gentlemen. Always a good thing as far as I'm concerned. So let's check this one out. This is called Two of Us from October 20th, I'm guessing that means. There we are. Okay, here we are. Oh, cool. Damn, dude. That is like the funkiest track I've ever heard from you guys. And that's something to say, because you guys have always have the funky drums. But this one is super funky. I love it. Really, really cool. Really cool. I love the kind of truncated verses, which aren't for like 8 bars, but it's like 3 bars and then another 3 or something like that. I forgot exactly what it is, but it's cool that it's a little more complicated than that. Kind of what what's that song by Massive Attack, Teardrop, does with its structure. That it's just not a four bars of a section and then just repeated that. I think that's really cool, and it moves the track forward really, really well. I think the whole track has a really nice movement forward, and that's, I mean, mostly, honestly, it's not because you're using a ton of tension or anything like that. It's just because it's really groovy. And again, I think I talked about this last week or as well, is that if you have a track that has really it's inherently groovy, that makes us want to dance, that moves time so much quicker, and we don't need to use that much tension, which I think is always a really interesting thing to work with in songs. Okay, so I only have a few negative comments. I think the melodies are all on point. I think it's super groovy. I love the grooves. I love the guitar riffs. Really, honestly, this is probably my favorite song from you guys so far, which might be because I've just forgotten about some of the older songs, because there's certainly been some really great ones from you guys. But this is, right now, from all I remember right now, this is my favorite one. I just really like this one. So there's just a few small points that I still notice with this one. The guitar sound in the chorus feels a little bit off compared to what we heard in the verses. The verses have more of a low cut sound that's a little more distorted. In the chorus, all of a sudden we get this big pearly kind of guitar sound, which feels a little bit out of place, especially because it's such a funky thing, and we don't want to have, for me, I don't want to have a pearly big guitar sound. I want to have like a down, dick, down, dick, bow. I want to have something with a little more twang. Maybe that's just me personally, but it was definitely too loud in the mix. That's maybe a different thing. And then the bridge, I thought it was really cool that you guys used brass, because that worked really well. I just wish it would have built a little bit more. I just wish there was, that the brass would go a little more out there, because right now it felt like the brass section got maybe a little bit bored there. Like, they weren't playing anything bad, for sure. I just wish they would have just grooved with it just a little bit more. It felt like they were holding back, or weren't really interested enough in the song to give it their all. And so I think that the brass should go 160% of what they're doing right now, with some higher notes, just getting really excited about the song. And it's also that transition from bridge to last chorus that I think didn't really quite work. And I think it just felt like, energy-wise, you were building just a tiny little bit, and then it kind of went down for the last chorus, which is not something you want, I don't think. So I think you either have to build more tension, or make your last chorus. Here's what I would probably do. I would probably make my last chorus sound a little bit different. Maybe start the last chorus with a couple of hits. Like the episode of the artist series that just went up today, half an hour ago, is on Jerry Lee Lewis's Great Balls of Fire. Which starts with the da-da-da-dum, with like a hit, essentially. Like, that's the very first thing we hear in the song. And so that, I think, is something that you guys could do for this last section here as well. Kind of have that same thing, like ba da 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 da. What's the melody again? Let me check that one more time. Yeah, so that's a little bit weak, but if you did down, do a fast dancing, da 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 da, boom, da 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 da, and then you go back into it, I think that could work really well. And then I also want to hear the brass here in the background. Okay, so the brass is here. I just wish maybe it wasn't playing. It's again, it's a little subdued. I would have probably worked something. Okay, here's kind of what I would have done. Not exactly that, but something a little more, a little more 16th note based, instead of having just bang, which is also cool. But maybe a mix of the both of them, I think, would probably be best. Because I definitely have those down, 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 you know, kind of finding a mix between the two of them that works with the vocal melody, that doesn't get in the way. I think that probably would be the best solution for this track. Again, really big fan of this one. Nice work, guys. Okay. And lastly, today we have a song from Miko, who says, "Hi, Friedemann Findeisen from Holistic Songwriting." Very good. Excellent. I've been following your YouTube channel for a while. I've also been creating song ideas for a very long while. Some of my songs have been in progress. By the way, welcome, Miko, to the community. Some of my songs have been in progress longer than Fear Inoculum. Oh, Jesus. Okay. By the way, I just recorded a video for Fear Inoculum, which is probably going to be a two-parter because there's a lot to uncover there. I think I recorded for like 3/4 of an hour or something like that. So it's probably going to be 2 parts. That should come out next week and the week after that. So I'm really excited. I actually really like the new Tool album. What did you guys think about it? Do you guys have any opinions about the new Tool record? I thought it was actually quite cool. So it is very similar to 10,000 Days, but I do like 10,000 Days a lot. So I don't mind that so much. I think it's a little weird that they haven't developed more in the last 14 years, but as far as I understood it, they wrote it pretty much back to back with 10,000 Days, and it just took them a really long time to finish it. So that kind of makes sense. It certainly seems like the guitarist, I want to say Adam Jones, is that his name? Tool guitarist Adam Jones, that's right. Yeah. Like Adam Jones probably wrote his riffs first and the rest of the band. So he's probably the most productive of the band, it seems, and the rest kind of just followed suit afterwards. It's cool, but there's a lot to digest still. Yeah, certainly. There's a lot going on the record as well. It's not as complex as 10,000 Days for sure, or any of the older records for that matter. But there's a lot of stuff going on for sure. It's more straightforward, I find. It builds a little more logically. The songs are built a little bit more step by step, rather than say something like Lateralis, which was just all over the place, and it was just an explosion of ideas. It's cool though, man. I really like it. I think it's really well written. Yeah, again, I'm kind of missing like the last 5% that I had with the previous records. But I mean, I'll take what I can get from Tool. Honestly, it's not a bad record, so I'm happy anyways. Yeah. Numa is my favorite song right now. Cool, I have to check that one out again. I don't know the titles, actually. I just had it kind of playing in the background, and kind of every once in a while I would just be like, what's going on here? Oh, interesting. Cool. All right. Okay. You've been a big inspiration for me to get going with these tracks. Finish them, publish them. Awesome, man. That makes me so happy, because that is really, honestly, like my goal that I've set myself for this year is helping people get their shit out there and finish their songs and get it out there. That is the most important goal I've set myself, because last year I really noticed a lot of information junkies are, mumbling around on my channel, and people just seem to just suck up information, but they don't start writing. And that really frustrated me. So my big thing for this year was, well, let's get people to take action and start writing. So I'm really happy to hear that. This song will be my first proper completed song or demo in a long while. I have written and performed most of it, except for the vocal performance and drum programming. Okay, except for the vocal performance and drum programming. Okay. The drummer is a friend and the singer is a freelancer who I hired. The purpose of my demos is to showcase the songwriting. The mix is quite rough. My dream is to find a producer at some point to help raise these demos to the next level. Some of my friends have compared this song to the White Stripes, 70s rock, and Nirvana. Dying to hear your feedback. Long story long. Here's the song. Then this is called Warning Signs Pre-Launch Demo. Impressive singer, man. It's very System of a Down. Okay, all right. So that was Warning Signs by The Infancy. Okay, cool, man. I mean, I like it. Definitely has a really nice attitude. You got a great singer there as well. Like those high notes. Very impressed by that for sure. And there's some cool stuff in here, man. I mean, the verse, the bridge, I particularly like. I think that's building really nicely. The one where I said it's kind of like System of a Down. What was it? I forgot what the song was. Anyways, but it definitely reminded of me of some System of a Down song on, I think, the first record. Wasn't it the self-titled one? Maybe. Anyways, doesn't matter so much. Cool. Okay. Let me think about this. I think there's a couple of things that could be improved. First of all, I think it's a little long. It's definitely on the long side with 5 minutes and 20 seconds. I feel like the song overstays its welcome a little bit. I mean, it's fine. Like I didn't get bored or anything like that. So I've definitely had worse songs in that regard that really just seemed to go on forever. And this didn't. It had a really nice energy throughout, and when it didn't, like in the bridge, it built a nice tension to make me want more. So that was good. But I think for a first time release, that's a general rule of thumb for myself. You know, keep them short. Keep them as short as you can. You can always expand later. If fans really respond well to your music, you can always expand your songs and go for the really long. You can do 50 minutes then if you want. But if this is your first release, I would say trim your songs to 3:30 max. My first single release for the Kanered record is a little over 2 minutes 30. So a super short, very punchy, kind of to the point song. The more you can be to the point with your singles, the better. Nobody's going to play this on the radio. It is just too long. So the very least you need a radio edit. Although if people are supposed to buy your album, I suggest you keep it short there as well. You know, try to make it almost a best of kind of thing of all of your songs, right? Maybe so maybe your process could be you write a 10-minute song and then you pick out the parts where you're like, oh, that's the best part here, and you just kind of paste it all together and make sure that it's just a best of just your best stuff, so people really feel almost overwhelmed by how many great ideas you have. Because sometimes I felt like, okay, I've heard this idea now. I think we can kind of, well, I didn't have that really, honestly. I never, again, I never had this during this song that I felt like, okay, this is getting boring or anything like that. It's just, in general, it's 5 minutes 20 for a first song. It's just very long. So I definitely shorten it down. I think the bridge is too long. It builds nicely in the beginning, but then it kind of stagnates a little bit. It kind of flats out. And what comes after it isn't really like a big payoff for all of that waiting. There's a little more silence, and then we go into the last big chorus. And I think I would cut out that silence. I don't think it needs to be there. I think you could go straight from the bridge, build, and then maybe a short break, and then go straight into that big finale. Okay, because right now it's stretching our attention span maybe a little bit too long. Other than that, I think right now you're not giving your singer enough room to play. Right now you're giving him like, hey, here's what I think happened. You probably sang the melody all on one pitch, all on one kind of range of pitches. And then the singer felt like, oh, wow, this needs to be higher energy. So I guess I'm going to sing this an octave higher. So he only has two modes. He has like very low and very, very high. And that's making things very, very difficult for him. So for me, great songs kind of explore the entire spectrum, right? We want to have a verse that's kind of in a mid spectrum that feels comfortable, and then the chorus should kind of push it a little bit more. And then maybe we have a bridge that's kind of in between the two, or that's lower in pitch. But we kind of want to work with that a little bit more. And certainly I don't think it should be very low and very high. It should definitely explore a good mid-range of the singer, so a comfortable space. And this was the first verse was definitely below his comfortable pitch, and the chorus was above his comfortable pitch, even though it sounds still great. He's a fantastic singer and he knows how to handle those notes. I still think like the song was lacking just a part that was comfortable to sing for your singer. Now, I know that's difficult if you're not singing yourself, and if you're writing for someone else, you never know what they can sing and how they're going to sing it. But that's something you have to take into account when you're writing your song. You kind of need to know what their good range is that they can write in, that they can sing in. And if you can't sing in that range that's comfortable for them, you better learn it. Even if it's just in falsetto, or it's better obviously if you can belt it with that same amount of intensity. That's obviously better. But even if not, even if it's just to sing it to him so he knows what you want, that's already good enough. But you definitely need to be singing the track in the type of energy that you want out of it. Because I think what happened probably during the recording process, and this is probably the track you sent the singer, you probably sang it for him in a very low pitch because you are maybe a little insecure about your voice, and so you held back a little bit and rather sang a little bit lower, a melody that you feel comfortable with. The problem is with that, you are limiting your singer. Like, honestly, go all out with your demos. If you're sending your singer something, make an idiot out of yourself. It doesn't matter, really. Like, I've sent so many horrible demos to people that I feel deeply ashamed about. And I just tell them, dude, I know this is just so cringy. It's horrible, but I want you to know what I want the energy to be. And that's just what I'd write them, And if you're honest like that, people will be like, okay, that's hilarious, and it sounds like a monkey is dying or something, but it's I know what you mean. I think that's more important. And also for yourself, if you're singing, if you're writing your song, and if you're singing your melodies, make sure you sing them with a certain energy as well, right? And not just like to yourself. You need to project those as well. That's a really, really important point, especially in rock music where we have so much energy and where the energy really has to come across. That is a really important point. What else? I think the one other thing I wanted to talk about maybe was the guitar playing in this riff part here. So, first of all, I'd really double track that, record it twice, pan one to the right, one to the left, or I guess from your end, left and right, so that you have a little bit of a wider guitar sound. And also, when you do that, you'll also notice some timing inconsistencies. Because right now, what it should sound like is da 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 da. Like, it's just not tight enough for this kind of music. Or I mean, I say this kind of music for this kind of like, indie kind of rock. We are like from the White Stripes, for example. We're definitely used to like a more raw kind of guitar sound, something that's very like, but the timing is a little bit off, and it's more about the energy. So I get that. But what Jack White from the White Stripes does always is he has a sort of he has more groove to his playing. And what that mostly pertains to is the length of your notes. So right, instead of playing da 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 da, what I'm looking for is something that's a little bit more da 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 da. So that first one, especially like the da da, we want to have like a da da, and then quiet, right? Just to give that whole thing a little bit more punch as well, because when you come in with da 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 da, then you have two punches instead of. See what I mean? Like if you just look at the waveform at the end, you'll see, if we're looking at your waveform, it's going to be, if we exaggerate a little bit. With my example, it would be. See what I mean? So there's a bunch more silences in there, which serves as contrast to make those big moments even bigger and to have them more impact, give them more impact. Yeah. And if you double track your guitars, you're going to notice those timing inconsistencies fairly quickly, I think, because you want those two guitars sound like one. And if you have timing inconsistencies, you're going to get some weird effects which you don't want. So that's why. Good, but otherwise, man, I mean, it has a nice attitude, a good sound. I mean, it still work. I think the drums. If we're talking about the drums, I think the drums sound a little too polished in terms of the sound, and the writing doesn't always work with the guitars. I mean, it's okay, but like with the da 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 da. So for the drums, I hear it more like something. You feel that makes more sense to me. Something a little bit simpler, or and what we have right now is or it could even be like something like that. Because right now it's just kind of a standard drum groove, and it feels like it's not really listening to what the guitar is playing. Again, it's fine, and in this genre we do sometimes see that. I think though that if it was playing more with the guitar, it would have more impact. It would just sound bigger, because if you're underlining those impacts, those hits of the guitar with the drums, it's going to give that a lot of push forward. Okay, so that was a lot of comments for a first song. So sorry for overloaded you with ideas. So cool. All right. Hopefully that gave you some good ideas on how to proceed in the future, though. All right, folks. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I'll see you all. I believe next week. Let me check whether that works out. But it should. Yes. Next week works. Ooh, and that's going to be our last session before the Songwriting Decks release on Kickstarter. So that's going to be truly exciting. I'm honestly pumped for this. The pre-launch went very well, and I hope we're going to reach so we have to reach 40% of our funding goal within the first 48 hours. That is kind of a requirement from everything I've read on the internet, and in books and on blogs and from people that I've talked to. 40% is the golden number. If you can reach that within the first 48 hours, then you have a much higher chance of succeeding with your Kickstarter campaign. And if we believe the pre-launch, it's looking like we're going to get that. But again, it's the first time I'm doing this, so who knows? Anything might go wrong. So I'm still very cautious about that. But yeah, I really hope that this is going to come to fruition and that we're going to see these things on a lot of songwriters' desks, because I really do think they're a great tool for people like you out there. All right, folks, thank you so much for watching. Take care and stay gefährlich.